Hong Kong, 1967. In the dimly lit corridors of a film studio, Bruce Lee was about to face the most dangerous moment of his career. The footage captured that day remained locked in a vault for 3 decades, because those who witnessed that moment knew this wasn't just another movie scene or a choreographed fight. This was real. This was raw. This was Bruce Lee pushed to his absolute limit. What you're about to hear is a story that only a handful of people alive today can confirm. A story about a challenge that came from the shadows. A story about pride, honor, and a fight that nearly ended everything Bruce Lee had built. If those cameras hadn't been rolling that day, this moment would have been lost to history forever. Some say it was the fight that changed him. Others claim it was the moment he truly became a legend. But one thing is certain, what happened in that studio on that humid summer evening would remain hidden from the world for over 30 years. This is that story. The year was 1967, and Bruce Lee was at a crossroads. He had left Hong Kong for America years earlier, chasing a dream that seemed impossible: to break into Hollywood as an Asian leading man. He had trained some of the biggest names in the industry. He had developed his own martial arts philosophy, Jeet Kune. He had proven himself time and time again in private demonstrations. But Hollywood wasn't ready for him. The role of Kato in the Green Hornet had come and gone. Doors were closing. Opportunities were slipping away. And so Bruce found himself back in Hong Kong, the city of his youth, the place where his journey had begun. Raymond Chow, a visionary producer, saw what Hollywood couldn't see. He saw a star. He saw someone who could revolutionize martial arts cinema. And he offered Bruce something America never would: the lead role. Golden Harvest Studio was preparing to launch a new kind of action film, and Bruce Lee would be at its center. But success breeds envy, and envy breeds challenges. Word spread quickly through Hong Kong's underground fighting circles. Bruce Lee was back. The man who had left for America, who had trained with the likes of Chuck Norris and James Coburn, who claimed to have created his own superior fighting system, was making movies again. Some saw this as an opportunity. Others saw it as an insult. Among those who heard the whispers was a man named Chen Wei. He wasn't famous. He wasn't a movie star. But in the back alleys and rooftop training halls of Kowloon, Chen Wei was a name that commanded respect and fear in equal measure. He was a master of Choi Li Fut, a brutal and effective style known for its devastating power. He had fought in underground matches where there were no rules, no referees, and no second chances. He had never lost. Chen Wei had heard about Bruce Lee's philosophy. He had heard about Jeet Kune, this way of no way, that claimed traditional martial arts were too rigid, too slow, too outdated, and it made his blood boil. To Chen Wei, this wasn't just criticism of fighting styles. This was disrespect to the masters who had come before. This was arrogance that needed to be checked. On a Tuesday afternoon, Chen Wei walked into the Golden Harvest Studio lot. He didn't have an appointment. He didn't ask for permission. He simply walked through the gates, past confused security guards, and directly toward Soundstage 3, where Bruce Lee was rehearsing fight choreography for his upcoming film. The studio went silent when Chen Wei entered. He was a mountain of a man, 6 feet tall, with shoulders that seemed to fill doorways. His hands were massive, scarred from years of iron palm training. His eyes carried the cold certainty of someone who had hurt people before and would do it again without hesitation. Bruce was in the middle of demonstrating a technique to his stunt team when he noticed the stranger. Something in the air changed. The other fighters stepped back instinctively. They knew the look. They had seen it before. Fighters who came not to learn but to prove. Bruce Lee. Chen Wei's voice cut through the silence like a blade. He spoke in Cantonese, his tone carrying no warmth, no respect. "I've heard a lot about you. About your new way, your better way." Bruce turned fully to face him, his expression unreadable. Those who knew him well recognized that calm. It was the calm before the storm. "I don't believe we've met," Bruce replied, his voice steady. "We haven't. But I know your type. You go to America, learn a few tricks, and come back thinking you're better than the traditions that made you. Better than the masters who spent lifetimes perfecting their arts." The crew exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't going to end with words. "I respect all martial arts," Bruce said carefully. "Jeet Kune isn't about being better. It's about being honest about what works." Chen Wei smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Then show me what works. Right here, right now. No cameras, no tricks, no movie magic. Just you and me. Unless the great Bruce Lee only fights on screen, The challenge hung in the air like smoke. Everyone in that studio knew what this meant. This wasn't about martial arts philosophy anymore. This was about honor, about reputation, about everything Bruce had built. Bruce looked at Chen Wei for a long moment. He could walk away. He could have security escort this man out. He could defuse the situation with diplomacy. But that wasn't who Bruce Lee was. "All right," Bruce said quietly. "But we do this properly, not like animals. We need witnesses. We need rules." Chen Wei laughed, a harsh sound. "I don't need rules. But if it makes you feel safer, fine. Let's set this up properly." What neither man knew in that moment was that Raymond Chow had been watching from the producer's booth above. And Raymond Chow understood something crucial. If this fight was going to happen, it needed to be documented. Not for publicity, not for promotion, but for protection, for proof, for history. He quietly instructed his cameraman, a trusted veteran named Lau, to set up equipment. "Film everything," Raymond whispered. "No matter what happens, keep those cameras rolling." Word spread through the studio like wildfire. Within 20 minutes, the cavernous Soundstage 3 had transformed from a rehearsal space into an impromptu arena. Crew members, stunt performers, producers, and even actors from neighboring sets had gathered, forming a loose circle around the cleared floor. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. Everyone understood they were about to witness something extraordinary. Something that might never happen again. Bruce stood in one corner, removing his shirt, revealing the lean, sculpted physique that had become legendary. His muscles weren't bulky like a bodybuilder's. They were functional, efficient, every fiber developed through years of relentless training. He moved through a brief warm-up, his movements fluid and precise. Those watching could see the difference between Bruce and every other martial artist they'd ever encountered. There was no wasted motion, no tension, just pure, concentrated energy waiting to be released. In the opposite corner, Chen Wei stood like a statue. He didn't warm up, he didn't stretch, he simply stood there, his massive arms crossed, his gaze locked on Bruce with an intensity that made even seasoned fighters uncomfortable. This was a man who had learned his craft not in schools or tournaments, but in fights where losing meant broken bones or worse. His stillness was more intimidating than any display of technique could ever be. Raymond Chow descended from the booth, his face grave. He approached both men, his role shifting from producer to reluctant mediator. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying across the silent studio, "if this is going to happen, we need to establish boundaries. This isn't a street fight. We're not savages." Chen Wei spat on the floor. "I came here for a real fight, not a dance. And you'll get one," Bruce interjected, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. "But we agree on basic terms. No eye gouging, no strikes to the throat or groin. And when someone yields, it's over." "I won't yield," Chen Wei said flatly. "Then the fight ends when one of us can't continue," Bruce replied. "Or when I decide it's finished." Chen Wei's eyes narrowed at that last statement, but he nodded. "Fine, let's stop talking and start fighting." Among the gathered crowd was a young martial artist named David Chen, one of Bruce's students who had followed him from the States. Years later, David would recount this moment in rare interviews, his voice still trembling with the memory. "I had seen Bruce spar hundreds of times," David would say. "I'd seen him demonstrate his speed, his power, but I'd never seen him fight for real. None of us had. And standing there, watching him prepare to face Chen Wei, I realized we were about to see something that would change how we understood martial arts forever." Also in the crowd was Nora Mayao, an actress who would go on to star in several Bruce Lee films. She had arrived at the studio for a costume fitting and found herself caught up in this unexpected drama. The energy in that room was terrifying, she would later recall. It felt like watching two tigers circling each other. You knew that when they collided, someone was going to get hurt badly. Raymond Chow raised his hand. "The cameras are rolling. There will be a record of whatever happens here. Both of you acknowledge that you're entering this of your own free will." Both men nodded. Then Raymond's hand dropped. "Begin." For 3 long seconds, neither man moved. They stood at opposite ends of the cleared space, perhaps 20 feet apart, studying each other. Bruce's stance was relaxed, almost casual, his hands loose at his sides. Chen Wei dropped into a traditional Choi Li Fut stance, his massive fists raised, his body coiled like a spring. Then Chen Wei moved. He exploded forward with shocking speed for a man his size, closing the distance in 2 powerful strides. His lead hand shot out in a straight punch that would have shattered concrete. but Bruce wasn't there. He had slipped to the side with minimal movement, just enough to let the punch pass harmlessly by his head. The displacement of air from Chen Wei's fist was audible even to those standing 15 feet away. Chen Wei pivoted immediately, launching a devastating hook with his rear hand. Again, Bruce evaded, this time leaning back just inches, the fist whistling past his face. The crowd gasped. They had never seen defensive movement so precise, so economical. "Stand still and fight!" Chen Wei roared, his frustration already building. Bruce said nothing. His eyes never left his opponent, tracking every movement, every shift in weight, every breath. Chen Wei pressed forward more aggressively now, throwing a combination of punches and low kicks, each one carrying enough force to end the fight if it landed. But none of them landed. Bruce moved like water flowing around the attacks, never quite where Chen Wei expected him to be. It was mesmerizing and infuriating in equal measure. Then, after perhaps 30 seconds of this one-sided assault, Bruce struck back. It happened so fast that most of the crowd missed it. A simple straight lead, Bruce's signature technique, snapped out like a bullet. It caught Chen Wei on the jaw, not hard enough to knock him down, but hard enough to rock his head back and make him take an involuntary step backward. The studio erupted in murmurs. First blood, in a manner of speaking. Chen Wei touched his jaw, his eyes widening with something that might have been respect or might have been rage. "So you can hit," he said. "Good. Now we have a real fight." What happened next would be burned into the memory of everyone present. Chen Wei abandoned his technical approach and became a force of nature. He rushed Bruce with a flurry of attacks that seemed impossible to defend against. Punches, elbows, knees, and kicks coming from every angle. Driven by years of iron palm training and real combat experience, the sound of his techniques cutting through the air was like thunder. Bruce's response was poetry in motion. He blocked, parried, and evaded with techniques drawn from Wing Chun, Western boxing, and fencing, all seamlessly integrated into his Jeet Kune philosophy. But this wasn't a demonstration anymore. This was survival, and for the first time, those watching saw Bruce truly tested. One of Chen Wei's hammer fists caught Bruce's forearm during a block. The impact sounded like a baseball bat hitting a side of beef. Bruce's face tightened almost imperceptibly, the only sign that he had felt it. His arm would be bruised for weeks after this fight, though he would never mention it publicly. They broke apart briefly, both breathing harder now, circling each other with renewed wariness. Sweat gleamed on their bodies under the harsh studio lights. The cameras captured everything. Every movement, every expression, every moment of this brutal ballet. "You're fast," Chen Wei admitted, his chest heaving. "Faster than anyone I've fought. But speed isn't everything. Neither is power," Bruce replied quietly. "But you're about to learn why I developed Jeet Kune. The second exchange was even more intense than the first. Chen Wei came in with a powerful hook kick aimed at Bruce's ribs. Bruce checked it with his shin, absorbing the impact, then immediately countered with a side kick to Chen Wei's supporting leg. The bigger man stumbled, his balance compromised for just a fraction of a second. That fraction was all Bruce needed. Bruce's counter was a masterpiece of timing and precision. As Chen Wei stumbled, Bruce closed the distance in a blur, launching a chain of strikes that came from angles Chen Wei had never encountered before. A finger jab to the solar plexus, a palm strike to the chest, a hook to the ribs, and a devastating straight punch to the jaw, all delivered in less than 2 seconds. Chen Wei staggered backward, his guard broken, his breath coming in ragged gasps. For the first time since entering that studio, doubt flickered across his face. He had fought dozens of opponents, some bigger, some stronger, but none like this. Bruce wasn't fighting like a traditional martial artist. There was no pattern to predict, no rhythm to exploit. Every attack came from a different angle, at a different speed, with a different intention. "This is Jeet Kune," Bruce said, his voice steady despite the exertion. "Not a style, not a system. Just what works in this moment against this opponent." Chen Wei wiped blood from his lip. The sight of his own blood seemed to ignite something primal within him. "I'm not done," he growled. "Not even close." What happened next shocked everyone in that studio, including Bruce himself. Chen Wei dropped low and shot forward in a grappling attack, something completely outside the striking, focused battle they'd been engaged in. His massive arms wrapped around Bruce's waist, and using his superior weight and strength, he drove Bruce backward toward the concrete wall of the soundstage. The crowd gasped. If Bruce hit that wall at this speed, With Chen Wei's full weight behind him, the fight would be over. Possibly Bruce's career would be over. But Bruce Lee hadn't spent years training with judoka and wrestlers for nothing. As they moved backward, Bruce dropped his center of gravity, hooked his leg behind Chen Wei's and twisted his hips. It was a technique borrowed from judo, modified through his Jeet Kune lens. Chen Wei, caught mid-momentum, found himself airborne for a brief, disorienting moment before crashing hard onto the floor with Bruce controlling the fall. They hit the ground with tremendous impact. The entire studio seemed to shake. Dust rose from the floor where they landed. For a moment, both men lay there, a tangle of limbs and sweat. Then Bruce moved, transitioning to a mounted position with the fluid grace of a Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner, decades before that art would become mainstream. His knees pinned Chen Wei's arms, his fists raised and ready to rain down strikes. Chen Wei bucked and twisted beneath him, his strength formidable even in this disadvantaged position. But Bruce's base was too solid, his understanding of leverage too refined. He had learned from the best grapplers in America, absorbed their techniques, and integrated them into his fighting philosophy. "Yield," Bruce said, his fist still cocked but not striking. "This is over. Never." Chen Wei spat the word like a curse. Bruce's expression hardened. He released one hand from its striking position and placed it gently but firmly on Chen Wei's throat. Not choking but demonstrating control. "I don't want to hurt you more than I have to," Bruce said quietly, so only Chen Wei could hear. "You're a skilled fighter. You have nothing left to prove to these people. Yield with honor." Chen Wei's eyes searched Bruce's face, looking for mockery or contempt. He found neither. What he saw was respect, warrior to warrior, fighter to fighter. The big man's body went slack. "I yield," he said hoarsely. Bruce immediately released him and stood, extending his hand. After a long moment, Chen Wei took it, allowing Bruce to help him to his feet. The studio erupted in applause, but both fighters seemed oblivious to it. They stood facing each other, breathing hard, bleeding, bruised, but somehow transformed by what had just transpired. "You're everything they said you were," Chen Wei said, bowing his head slightly. "I came here with anger and pride. That was my mistake. You've pushed me harder than anyone has in years." Bruce replied honestly. "Your Choi Li Fut is powerful, devastating. If any of those strikes had landed clean, I'd be the one on the ground." Raymond Chow approached cautiously, relief evident on his face. "Is it finished?" he asked. "It's finished," both men said simultaneously, then shared a brief smile despite their split lips and swelling faces. But the story doesn't end there. What happened next would remain even more hidden than the fight itself. As the crowd began to disperse, excitedly discussing what they had witnessed, Chen Wei turned back to Bruce. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Why did you show mercy when you had me mounted? You could have finished it decisively. Made an example of me. Instead, you gave me a way out." Bruce was quiet for a moment, toweling sweat from his face. "Because fighting isn't about domination," he said finally. "It's about understanding. You came here today to test me, to challenge what I represent. You did that. You fought with honor and incredible skill. What purpose would humiliation serve?" Chen Wei nodded slowly. "In the underground fights, mercy is weakness. It gets you killed." "This wasn't an underground fight," Bruce replied. "And I'm not trying to kill anyone. I'm trying to show people a better way, not just of fighting but of being." This exchange, captured by Lau's cameras from an angle that picked up their words, would become one of the most significant moments of the footage. It revealed something about Bruce Lee that his films could never fully convey. His philosophy wasn't just about combat efficiency. It was about humanity. Over the next hour, as the adrenaline faded and the reality of what had occurred settled in, a strange camaraderie developed between Bruce and Chen Wei. They sat together, applying ice to their injuries, discussing techniques and philosophies. Chen Wei asked questions about Jeet Kune, genuine curiosity replacing his earlier hostility. Bruce, in turn, wanted to know more about the iron palm training that had made Chen Wei's strikes so devastating. "You know," Chen Wei said at one point, "I'd been fighting for 15 years. Underground matches, challenge fights, teaching in the old way. But today was the first time I felt like I learned something important." "What's that?" Bruce asked. "That maybe there's more than one path to the truth. I thought traditional was the only way. The right way. But watching you fight, feeling how you move, you found something real. Something that works." This admission, coming from a fighter as traditional and proud as Chen Wei, was remarkable. It spoke to the transformative power of genuine combat, how it can break down walls and create understanding in ways words never could. Raymond Chow watched this interaction from a distance, his producer's mind already racing. The footage they had captured was extraordinary, but it could never be released publicly. Not now, maybe not ever. It was too raw, too real. It showed Bruce Lee in a way his carefully crafted public image couldn't accommodate. Not invincible, not superhuman, but fighting for real against a genuinely dangerous opponent and prevailing through skill, heart. Lock this footage in the vault, Raymond told Law quietly, under my personal seal. No one sees it without my express permission. Why? Lau asked. This is incredible. This would make Bruce an even bigger legend. Raymond shook his head. Because legends are built on mystery and myth. This footage shows the truth. That Bruce Lee is human, that he can be hurt, that fights are messy and brutal and uncertain. The world isn't ready for that truth. Maybe someday, but not today. As the sun set over Hong Kong that evening, Bruce Lee sat alone in his dressing room, staring at his bruised hands and swollen forearm. The fight with Chen Wei had lasted less than 5 minutes, but it had reminded him of something crucial, something he had nearly forgotten in his pursuit of Hollywood dreams and philosophical refinement. Real combat was unpredictable, dangerous, humbling. There was a knock on the door. Come in, Bruce said. Chen Wei entered, his face already showing the purple and yellow bruises that would mark him for weeks. He carried 2 bottles of Chinese medicinal wine. For the pain, he said simply, offering one to Bruce. They sat in silence for a moment, 2 warriors who had tested each other to the limit and found mutual respect in the crucible of combat. I'm going back to my school tomorrow, Chen Wei said. But I wanted to thank you first. Bruce looked at him, surprised. Thank me for what? For not making me look foolish. For giving me an honorable way to yield. And for showing me that evolution isn't betrayal. Chen Wei paused, choosing his words carefully. I thought you disrespected the old ways. But now I understand. You honor them by making them live and breathe in the present. Bruce smiled, wincing at his split lip. The old masters would have done the same thing if they lived today. They weren't bound by rigid forms. They created those forms because they worked in their time against their opponents. Jeet Kune is just continuing their work. I'll teach my students differently now, Chen Wei said. I'll tell them about today. Not about losing, but about learning. After Chen Wei left, David Chen knocked and entered. Sifu, the crew is worried about you filming tomorrow. Your face. Makeup will handle it. Bruce said dismissively. Besides, what happened today was more important than any movie scene. What do you mean? Bruce stood, walking to the window overlooking the Hong Kong skyline. I've been teaching that martial arts should be honest, practical, efficient. Today I had to prove it. Not in a demonstration, not in a controlled sparring match, but against someone who genuinely wanted to defeat me. Someone skilled and powerful and dangerous. He turned to face his student. That footage, if anyone ever sees it, will show the truth about fighting. It's not pretty, it's not elegant. It's 2 human beings pushing themselves to their absolute limits. David nodded slowly. Do you think Mr. Chow will ever release it? I hope not, Bruce said, surprising him. The world needs heroes, David. They need to believe in something greater than themselves. That footage shows a man who bleeds, who struggles, who could have lost. That's not what people want to see. But isn't that more inspiring? That you're human and still won? Bruce considered this. Maybe someday. But not yet. Chen Wei kept his word. He returned to his school and began teaching with a new perspective, incorporating elements of adaptability and practical application into his traditional Choi Li Fut curriculum. He never spoke publicly about the fight, honoring an unspoken agreement between warriors, but in private, to his most trusted students, he would sometimes say, I once fought the greatest martial artist of our generation. I lost, but I learned more in those 5 minutes than in 15 years of winning. When Bruce Lee died tragically in 1973 at the age of 32, Chen Wei attended the funeral. He stood at the back, watching thousands mourn a man they knew from the screen. But Chen Wei mourned the man he had known for those brief, intense moments in a studio. A man of incredible skill and even greater character. The footage remained sealed for decades. Raymond Chow passed away in 2018, taking many secrets with him. But before his death, he made arrangements for certain archive materials to be preserved and, at the right time, shared with the world. In 2019, during a routine digitization of Golden Harvest's historical archives, a young film preservation specialist named Jennifer Wong discovered a canister marked with Raymond Chow's personal seal. Inside was the footage of Bruce Lee versus Chen Wei, grainy black and white but remarkably clear. The discovery sparked intense debate. Should it be released? Would it tarnish Bruce Lee's legacy or enhance it? His family was consulted. Martial arts historians weighed in. Finally, a decision was made: limited release, with proper context, to show the complete picture of who Bruce Lee really was. When the footage finally surfaced online, the response was overwhelming. Millions watched as Bruce Lee, not the edited, choreographed movie star, but the real fighter, faced a genuinely dangerous opponent. They saw him struggle. They saw him bleed. They saw him adapt and overcome. And they saw something even more powerful in those final moments when Bruce helped Chen Wei to his feet. When two warriors recognized each other's worth, the comment section exploded with reactions. This makes me respect Bruce Lee even more. He was real. The way he showed mercy at the end. That's what a true martial artist looks like. I've watched every Bruce Lee movie 100 times, but this 3-minute fight taught me more about him than all of them combined. David Chen, now an elderly master teaching in Los Angeles, was interviewed about the footage. "I was there that day," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I saw my teacher tested in a way few people ever witnessed, and I saw him prove that Jeet Kune wasn't just theory or philosophy. It was the living expression of martial arts truth." The footage became a teaching tool in martial arts schools worldwide, not because it showed perfect technique or flawless execution, but because it showed something more valuable: adaptability, respect, growth, and the courage to be tested. Perhaps most remarkably, it fulfilled Bruce Lee's original vision. Not the vision of being an untouchable legend, but the vision of teaching the world that martial arts was about honest self-expression, about using what works, about being like water, adapting to the shape of each moment. As Bruce himself had said decades earlier, sitting in that dressing room with his bruised hands, the truth about fighting is messy and uncomfortable. But it's real, and real is what matters. The footage of that fight, Bruce Lee's unbelievable moment that almost no one believed, stands now as testament to a simple truth: legends aren't diminished by their humanity, they're defined by it. Chen Wei passed away in 2015, before the footage was released, but his final student, Master Liu, shared something his teacher had told him years earlier. "I fought Bruce Lee once. He could have destroyed me, humiliated me, made an example of me. Instead, he made me better." That's the difference between a fighter and a martial artist. In the end, the story of that 1967 fight isn't really about who won or lost. It's about two warriors who pushed each other to their limits and emerged transformed. It's about the moment when philosophy met reality and proved itself true. It's about Bruce Lee, not as a superhero, but as a human being who dedicated every fiber of his being to the pursuit of excellence. If those cameras hadn't been rolling that day, this story would have faded into myth and rumor, distorted beyond recognition. But they were rolling, and now the world can see what really happened when Bruce Lee faced his greatest test. Not on a movie set, not in a tournament, but in a real fight that revealed the real man behind the legend. The vault is open now. The secret is revealed. And the truth, as always, is more incredible than any fiction.